My best friend accused me of ruining her life after I refused to lie in court for her, and now half our town believes I destroyed her marriage on purpose. My best friend is telling everyone I ruined her life on purpose because I would not lie in court for her, and now half our town believes I destroyed her marriage like it was a hobby, and I am sitting here realizing how fast a person can turn you into the villain when the truth is inconvenient. I am Nara. I am in my 30s. I live in a small town where everybody knows everybody's truck and everybody's business. I work a steady job that keeps me in the same circles year after year, and I have been friends with my best friend, Yold, since we were kids. We are the kind of friends who can sit in silence and still feel like it counts as hanging out. Yold has always been intense, not mean, not loud, just intense. She makes decisions fast and then acts like they were inevitable. She gets mad fast and then forgets she was mad when she needs something. And I have always been the slower one, the person who wants to sleep on it, the person who asks what happens next. Her husband is Callum, and I used to think he was decent, a little stiff, a little proud, but decent. They were together a long time, married a few years, no kids, and to the outside world they were that couple who hosted backyard fundraisers and volunteered at community events and posted smiling pictures that looked like stability. Then, about 2 months ago, Yold started calling me late at night, not crying, not screaming, just talking fast, telling me Callum was threatening her with divorce, telling me he was trying to take the house, telling me he was acting controlling, telling me he was going to paint her as unstable, and she kept saying she needed me to remember how he really is, like she was building a case in my head. I told her to slow down. I told her I could listen, but I cannot fix it, and she kept saying she did not need fixing, she needed loyalty. I thought she meant emotional loyalty, like show up and sit beside her, bring her paperwork, distract her, that kind of thing, and I was willing to do that, because she was my friend and her marriage was collapsing. The first time I felt that cold warning feeling was when she started rehearsing specific phrases with me, like she would say, if anyone asks, you saw him yelling at me that night, right? And I would tell her I did not see him yelling, I was not there, and she would make a little frustrated sound and say, but you know he is the type, and I would tell her knowing someone is the type is not the same as witnessing something. She started talking about court a lot, not divorce court, but a protective order hearing, because she wanted an order that would force Callum out of the house immediately, and she told me her attorney said she needed a witness to establish a pattern, and she kept framing it like she just needed me to confirm what was already true. I asked her what the truth was, specifically, and she told me Callum had been emotionally abusive for years. She told me he intimidated her. She told me he controlled money. She told me he threatened her, and she said it all with a straight face and steady voice, which is important, because I did not immediately dismiss her. I listened. I took it seriously. I asked questions. The problem was the more questions I asked, the more her story shifted, like she would give an example. Then when I asked when it happened she would say she could not remember, then she would say it was a lot of times, then she would say it was basically constant, and when I asked why she never told me before, she said she was embarrassed and wanted to protect Callum's image, which could be true, but it also felt like she was retrofitting a story to fit the moment. Then she asked me directly if I would testify for her, and my stomach dropped, because that is not a casual favor, that is a legal proceeding, that is being under oath, that is being asked to say things that can be checked, and that can have consequences. I told her I would tell the truth about what I personally saw and heard, nothing more, and she got quiet. Then she asked me what I meant by personally, and I told her I meant I cannot say I witnessed things I did not witness, and Yold's voice changed. It got sharper, and she told me that is not how support works. I told her it is literally how court works. You tell what you know, you do not invent. And she told me I was being dramatic. She told me everybody exaggerates in court. She told me Callum would lie anyway, so it would be fair. And hearing her say that made my skin crawl, because it was so casual, like lying was a tool and not a crime. I went home that night feeling sick, and I started reading about what it means to be a witness and what happens if you lie under oath, because I needed to ground myself in reality. And yes, perjury is a criminal offense. It involves knowingly making false statements under oath, and it can lead to serious legal consequences because it harms the legal process. And that was all I needed to know to stop entertaining her casual attitude about bending the truth. A week later, I got served with a subpoena, not an email, not a text, a formal document delivered to me at my workplace reception, and my hand started shaking when I saw it, because a subpoena is not a request, it is a legal order to appear, and ignoring it can lead to consequences like contempt, and it made everything feel real in a way Yold's late night calls did not. I called Yold immediately, because I was confused and honestly angry that she let it get to that point without warning me, and she acted like it was normal. She acted like it was a minor scheduling inconvenience. She told me the hearing date, she told me what to wear, and she started telling me what to say, like she was coaching a performance. I told her again I would tell the truth, and she got annoyed, and she told me the truth is Callum ruined her life, and I told her that might be her emotional truth, but court needs factual truth, what happened, when, who saw it, what evidence exists, and she got quiet again. Then she asked if I was on his side. I was not on his side, I was on the side of not committing a crime for anyone, and I did not say it that harshly to her, but that is what it was, because lying under oath is perjury, and being a friend does not make that safe. The day of the hearing, I went to the courthouse, a small building with a security scanner at the entrance and chairs lined up along the wall, and I saw Yold pacing like a caged animal. She looked at me like she was relieved and also like she owned me, like my presence meant her plan was working. Callum was there too with his attorney, and Callum looked exhausted, not smug, not excited, just tired, and when he saw me his face flickered with something I could not place, maybe hope, maybe dread, maybe both. We were called in, and everything moved faster than I expected, not because it was casual, but because the judge had a stack of cases and wanted clarity, and I sat on a bench feeling my pulse in my ears. When it was my turn, I was sworn in, and that oath moment was the point of no return in my head, because you are explicitly promising to tell the truth, and that is where perjury becomes real if you knowingly lie about material facts. Yold's attorney asked me questions that were clearly shaped to get the story they wanted. He asked if I had ever seen Callum act aggressively toward Yold. He asked if I had ever heard him threaten her. He asked if she had ever confided in me, and I answered carefully. I said I had seen them argue. I said I had seen her upset. I said she had told me she felt controlled recently, but I said I had not personally witnessed threats or physical intimidation, and I said I could not testify to things I did not observe. Yold's head snapped toward me like she could not believe I was saying it out loud, like I was breaking a pact she thought existed. Then Callum's attorney asked me questions that surprised me. He asked if Yold had ever asked me to exaggerate. He asked if she had coached me on what to say, and my stomach dropped because I realized they had texts, they had something, or they were fishing. I told the truth. I said she asked me to say I witnessed yelling on a night I was not there, and I said she asked me to confirm things I could not confirm, and as soon as I said it, the room felt like it tightened, because it shifted from a simple he said she said to a credibility problem. Yold made a small sound, not a sob, more like a sharp inhale, and she looked like she wanted to stand up and stop me physically, and I felt awful and also weirdly calm, because the truth is the truth, and I was not going to be manipulated into lying under oath, because lying under oath is a crime and it is not something you take lightly just because you live in a small town and people expect loyalty. After my testimony, the judge asked a few direct questions to clarify, and the judge's tone changed, not angry, but skeptical, and the judge told Yold's attorney to address the coaching issue, and Yold's attorney tried to redirect, but the damage was done. The judge did not grant the protective order, not fully, and instead issued a limited temporary mutual no-contact directive pending further review, and I could see Yold's face collapse into rage, because she did not get what she wanted, which was Callum removed from the house and her narrative officially validated in one quick hearing. Outside the courtroom, Yold exploded at me in the hallway, not screaming profanity, but loud enough that people turned their heads. She told me I betrayed her. She told me I was supposed to be her person. She told me I made her look like a liar, and I told her I did not make her look like anything. I told the truth. She followed me down the hallway still talking, still accusing, and I did not argue back because arguing back would have made it a bigger scene, and I just kept walking until I got outside and into the parking lot, and I sat in my car shaking. I thought it would cool off after that. I thought she would be angry for a week, then embarrassed, then quiet, but that is not what happened. Yold started telling the town a story, not the real one, a cleaner one where she is the innocent wife and I am the jealous friend who sabotaged her, and she did it through the fastest channels in a small town, community boards, volunteer circles, informal networks, and the worst part is that people wanted a simple villain, so they picked me. It started with little cold shoulders, someone at the community garden sign and desk acting like they did not see me, someone at the library fundraiser table ignoring my greeting, then it escalated into direct comments, people asking why I would help an abuser, people asking if I was having an affair with Callum, which is absurd, and the fact they even asked made my face burn. Then it got into my job, because small towns do that. Someone called my supervisor and implied I was untrustworthy, that I lie, that I side with bad men, and my supervisor pulled me into a small meeting room and asked if I was okay and what was going on, and I had to explain I was subpoenaed and I testified truthfully, and I was being blamed for not lying. I started getting messages from numbers I did not recognize, not threats exactly, more like moral lectures and accusations, telling me I ruined a woman's life, telling me I should be ashamed, telling me I should fix it, and I could feel my body slipping into this constant tense state, like I was waiting for another shoe to drop. Then Yold's marriage actually collapsed, because Callum filed for divorce shortly after, and in our town that kind of filing becomes public gossip instantly, and Yold decided the easiest way to survive the humiliation was to put the blame on me, because if she can convince people I caused it, she does not have to admit she caused it by trying to weaponize court. Now she is telling anyone who will listen that I destroyed her marriage on purpose, that I refused to help her because I wanted her life, and she is acting like I committed some horrible betrayal instead of refusing to commit perjury, and I am sitting here wondering how you defend yourself in a town that runs on feelings instead of facts. Update 3 weeks later. 3 weeks later, the town vibe has not cooled down, it has hardened, like people decided what story they like and they do not want new information, and the most exhausting part is that you cannot argue with a rumor mill without feeding it. I stopped going to places where I would have to stand there and absorb comments, not because I am hiding, but because I needed to keep my life functioning, and you cannot function when every grocery run turns into someone staring at you like you are a villain. But then I remembered one of my own rules to myself: do not let someone force you to disappear, because disappearing makes their story look true. So I created a different routine, different hours, different routes, not a dramatic move, just practical, and I focused on documentation, because in my world, documentation is safety. The first escalation in this 3-week window was Yold attempting to pull me into court again, not as a witness this time, but as a target. I received a notice from Callum's attorney, delivered through proper channels, stating that Yold had claimed I was conspiring with Callum to ruin her, and she wanted the court to consider me as a hostile influence, which sounds ridiculous, but when something is filed, it becomes a thing you have to address, even if it is nonsense. Callum's attorney asked if I would be willing to provide a declaration about what happened, and here is where the messy reality hits. I did not want to be involved at all, but Yold had already put me in the center of her story, and if I stayed silent, she could keep writing whatever she wanted into official paperwork without pushback. I asked if I had to respond, and Callum's attorney told me I was not required, but a clear factual declaration could help shut down false claims, and I thought about it for 2 days, then I agreed to provide a brief statement, not gossip, not emotion, just the facts, that I was subpoenaed, that I testified to what I personally observed, and that Yold asked me to say I witnessed things I did not witness. I also consulted a local legal aid clinic for my own protection, not because I wanted to sue anyone immediately, but because I wanted to understand my risk, and they told me something simple: if someone is spreading false statements presented as fact that harm your reputation, it can cross into defamation territory, but proving it depends on specifics, publication, falsity, unprivileged statements, and damages, and in small towns the damage part can be real fast because it bleeds into work and community access, and that aligned with what I was living. The next escalation was public, because Yold realized court paperwork alone was slow, and she wanted fast social punishment. She showed up at a community volunteer board meeting I have been part of for years, not as a member, but as a guest speaker, and she asked for 5 minutes to speak about domestic safety and believing victims, which on its face sounds noble, but I recognized immediately what she was doing. She was setting up a moral frame where anyone who questioned her story was a dangerous person. She did not name me directly, but she described a friend who betrayed her in court, and she used enough details that anyone who knew us would know, and I sat there in a folding chair feeling my face heat up while people glanced at me, and the chairperson looked uncomfortable but did not stop her because nobody wants to be the person who silences a woman talking about abuse. After she finished, she walked past my chair slowly and looked down at me with this expression that was almost satisfied, like she had just stamped me with a label in front of an audience. I did not confront her, because your rules include no showing up at doors and no parking lot arguments and no long text fights, and also because arguing with her in that moment would have made me look like the aggressor, so I stayed still. I let her leave, and afterward I asked the chairperson for a private conversation. I told the chairperson I did not want conflict in the board, but I needed her to understand Yold is using the board as a platform to defame me, and I asked if the board had any policy about personal grievances being aired in meetings, and the chairperson admitted they did not, but she agreed that it was inappropriate, and she said she would document the incident and restrict future guests speaking to agenda-approved topics, which was something at least. Then someone forwarded me a screenshot of a community bulletin site post, not a group chat, not social media stalking, just a public bulletin page where events are listed, and in the comments under a domestic awareness event, someone using a name I recognized as Yold's cousin wrote that a certain witness betrayed a victim in court and should not be trusted in town, and it referenced my workplace indirectly. That was the first time I saw her circle putting it in writing publicly, and I saved it immediately, because written false statements presented as fact and spread to third parties are exactly the kind of thing defamation claims talk about, and truth is a defense, which matters because my defense is literally that I told the truth under oath and refused to lie. The most painful part of the 3 weeks was losing people I did not think would be swayed, not because they believed Yold's whole story, but because they did not want to be associated with mess, so they quietly stepped away, stopped inviting me, stopped replying, stopped making eye contact. I also got a formal warning at work, not disciplinary, but a caution, because the HR manager told me the rumor spillover was affecting workplace harmony, and I wanted to scream, because I did not start this, but instead I gave them the subpoena copy and the date of my court appearance, and I told them I would not discuss the case at work and I would not engage with rumors, and HR seemed relieved to have something concrete to put in a file. Then, about 2.5 weeks into this, I received a cease and desist letter from Yold's attorney, accusing me of spreading rumors about her and interfering in her marriage, and I laughed out loud when I read it, not because it was funny, but because it was upside-down reality. She was the one telling the town I destroyed her marriage, and now she wanted to scare me into silence. I took that letter to the legal aid clinic, and they told me not to respond emotionally, and they reminded me that statements made in court proceedings can be privileged, meaning there are protections around testimony, but that does not give someone a free pass to defame you outside of court, and they told me to keep saving public posts and keep track of any workplace impact, because damages matter. I wanted this to end quietly, but the next escalation removed the quiet option. Callum's divorce filing included allegations that Yold had fabricated or exaggerated abuse claims, and Callum's attorney requested the court review certain messages where Yold coached witnesses, including me, and that meant my name would appear in filings again, which meant more gossip fuel. Then a court clerk called me, not to give legal advice, just to confirm my address for service of a deposition subpoena, because Callum's attorney wanted to take my deposition to preserve testimony about the witness coaching. And yes, a subpoena means you are legally required to comply unless excused by the court, and ignoring it can lead to legal consequences. And I could feel my stomach drop because I knew this would revive the whole town drama again. So now I am facing a deposition. Yold is escalating public accusations, her circle is posting comments that harm my reputation, my work is getting dragged into it, and the worst part is Yold keeps saying I ruined her life, when the only thing I did was refuse to lie under oath, because lying under oath is perjury and it is a crime, and I am not going to throw my life away so she can win a hearing. Final update 5 months later. 5 months later, the town still has opinions, but the legal part is resolved, and the way it resolved is the only reason I can breathe again. The deposition happened about a month after my last update. It was held in a plain office conference room in a neighboring county building used by court reporters, not a courthouse, not a restaurant, just a quiet room with a long table, a recorder, and a court reporter typing everything you say. I showed up with a consultation attorney from the legal aid clinic, not because I was on trial, but because I wanted to make sure I understood each question and did not get baited into speculation, and I kept my answers factual, what Yold asked me to say, what I actually observed, what I testified to, and what happened afterward in town. The attorney reminded me before we started that sworn testimony matters, and that false statements under oath can lead to perjury charges if they are knowingly false and material, and that reminder grounded me again because it is exactly what Yold wanted me to risk for her. During the deposition, Callum's attorney introduced my saved screenshots of the bulletin comments and asked me to confirm they were public and that they referenced me, and I confirmed, and then he asked whether I had suffered harm, and I described the workplace complaint call, the HR meeting, and the social isolation, not dramatically, just as facts. Yold's attorney tried to suggest I was biased against her because I secretly disliked her marriage, and I kept my tone calm and said I was subpoenaed, I testified truthfully, and I did not initiate any public discussion of her marriage, and I repeated it as many times as needed until it was boring. A few weeks after the deposition, the divorce case reached a settlement, not because everyone suddenly became honest, but because the court process was exposing too much. The judge had expressed concern about witness coaching and credibility, and Yold's side was not winning the narrative battle in a room where documents mattered. The settlement included a mutual non-disparagement clause between Yold and Callum, and it included a provision that neither party would involve third parties in public statements about the case, and that mattered because it gave Callum a basis to push back if Yold kept using me as a scapegoat. Yold did not stop immediately, because she is not the type who stops because it is right, she stops when it costs too much. She posted one last vague statement on the community bulletin page implying she had been silenced by the system, and several people commented supportive things, but the tone had shifted, because by then enough people had heard that she tried to coach testimony, and enough people had seen her escalate, and in small towns people will tolerate drama until it risks their own comfort, then they back away. The real ending, the one that ended it definitively, happened in a courtroom, not in a hallway argument, not at a door, not through a text chain, but through a defamation complaint that I filed after the legal aid clinic helped me understand my options. The clinic told me defamation claims generally require showing a false statement of fact was published to others, that it was unprivileged, that it was made with at least negligence regarding truth, and that it caused harm, and I had enough documentation to show a pattern of public and semi-public statements identifying me and accusing me of intentional sabotage and dishonest conduct. And I also had workplace impact documentation showing reputational harm, which is part of what courts look at. In damages, I did not file it to get money, I filed it to force a stop, because polite requests do not work on someone who enjoys the chaos. Once the complaint was served, Yold's attorney contacted mine and asked for settlement, which made me laugh in that same tired way, because for months she acted like she was untouchable, and now she wanted it quiet. The settlement terms were simple and strict. Yold agreed in writing to stop making public statements about me, to delete specific posts and request deletion of comments from family members she could control, and to issue a written retraction that she had previously claimed I lied in court and ruined her marriage on purpose. The retraction did not have to be emotional, it just had to be clear, and it had to be posted in the same public bulletin space where the accusations spread, because that is where the damage was done. She complied, not gracefully, but she complied. The retraction stayed up, and people saw it, and you could feel the town shift again, not into love for me, but into discomfort with her, because small towns hate being proven wrong publicly. The friendship ended, obviously, and it ended in the most final way possible, not with a goodbye conversation, not with closure, but with a legal document that exists because she would not stop trying to rewrite reality. The last time I saw Yold was at the county fairgrounds during a vendor setup day for a charity market, not a park, not a grocery store, the fairgrounds. She walked past me without looking, and for the first time in months I did not feel my stomach drop, I just felt quiet, like my body finally understood the fight was over.